Oh, it's everything. I mean, it's my religion, it's my belief system, it's my history, it's the very essence of what I do and what I am and what I try to do to other people. I try to share the joy of singing because I was lucky enough to be born with a voice. Music is a vocation, it's my life really. It's a spiritual act, it's a physical act, it's a cerebral act.
Hello and welcome to The Family of Things, a podcast about life and how we choose to live it. I'm Helen Shaw, and my guest today is a man often called a modern troubadour, a singer and performer well known for his high energy stage performances and stamina, a roof-lifting voice, and his distinctive stage look of dark locks, hats and lots of black leather, with the occasional cane thrown in as well. It's Jack Lukeman, Jack L, whose lockdown singing sessions have entertained thousands across the last year, and who I've had the pleasure and fortune to work with a few times before. Jack joins me today from his home in Athy, which of course is also now his recording and performance space. Thanks for joining me today. I mean, Jack, you've been so busy in lockdown with the lockdown sessions, but one of the really beautiful things you did was this recording with your dad, Sean. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I did an album called The Lockdown Sessions, Volume 1. That's a threat. Because we don't want Volume 2. We want out of the lockdown, of course.
No, one lockdown album is quite enough.
Well, I've done so many lockdown sessions. I mean, at this stage, there must be nearly 50 of them. My own songs and different artists, that it's... you could definitely get a Volume 2 depending on how long things go on for. You know, I got into doing the live lockdown sessions on a Saturday night at 8 p.m. on Facebook. And it became a regular fixture for everybody to meet up, I suppose, on a Saturday night. And the whole thing of learning how to, you know, make a gig work across the internet has been fantastic. You feel like a pioneer, you know, trying to figure out how to make this thing happen. But
how to make it work?
Well, just that thing of you can read people's thoughts as they're watching the gig and they can talk to you as you're doing the show. And
it's so mad, isn't it, that they can actually talk back to you now?
Yeah, and it's like a radio show then, because you're people sending requests, and actually it was something my dad said to me, which I thought was kind of sweet, was that it reminded them of growing up when they'd be listening to the BBC, and you know, it was after the war and people would be putting out requests over the airwaves to different people, because people are tuning in from all over the world. So it's fantastic. I mean, it's an amazing experience, I have to say. But I did so many of these that I said I'd do a lockdown best of, and I found some old recordings while I was doing it, because I had the time, because I've got so many old recordings of my dad singing, where I'd recorded him singing a couple of songs. But I had a beautiful version of him singing Young at Heart, the Sinatra classic, and That's Life. So I was able to, do a duet with him on That's Life, able to strip away the music that was there. So it was great. I always wanted to do a duet and get it down on record. And I just wanted to get his voice on record because he has a beautiful voice.
That's life. That's life. That's what all the people say. You're riding high in April, shut down in May.
And I was, lucky enough to get it through the gene. And as I was saying, my mother's good looks, just so he doesn't feel left out. So it was a fantastic thing to do, and it was lovely because he had a stroke it's 2 years ago now. Obviously a stroke sets you back. His voice wouldn't be as good as it was then, so it was great to capture it then.
But I won't ever let it get me down.
And make the most of it. And people have enjoyed hearing him. So
it's lovely.
He might be going.
We
might be getting him out on the road and make a few bob off, and now when the whole thing opens up again.
What did your dad think of it? I mean, what did Sean think when he heard it?
Chuffed, you know. I mean, music has always been a great thing, and he's been a great inspiration, you know. Seeing him sing songs like Old Man River when I was a kid kind of opened me head up to the magic of music and how it can lift people out of the everyday, and just a way of expressing themselves. And I suppose it was a great inspiration, you know, the old sessions at home. And just his general love of music. Now, my mother had a great love of music too. My mum would be into, you know, the Beatles and Elvis. Whereas my dad, you know, he got the older stuff. It was the crooners, Sinatra and Nat King Cole. So it was all the big bangs of music. I think it was a very good place to start.
Fairy tales can come true. It can happen to you if you're young at heart.
So yes, I got a great love of all the old classics.
And Jack, I know the family business is the garage, and you went into it as a mechanic as a young fella. But was your dad really, in a sense, a frustrated singer? Would he have loved to have had the life that you've ended up having?
Well, he definitely has an optimistic, upbeat person. So he was always very happy, just, you know, working, and he loved sessions and stuff.
And life gets more exciting with each passing day.
I think coming from a small town, as much as me growing up, I never thought that was a possibility to actually, you know, it was another world that didn't exist around you, the world of music and the arts and showbiz, if you like. So.
And making a living from it.
I'm making a living from it. Yeah, that's still the hardest part. But I'm sure he would have loved to, and sang, and was is famous locally for singing. You know, he was the man to sing at your wedding or your funeral, for that case. So I'm sure he would have loved to have sang as well. But so that's why it was so nice to get him on record singing, and you know, they even played it on a few shows on Radio 1, which was fantastic.
You have a head start if you are among the very young at heart.
As I say, you went in to the garage as a mechanic, as a young lad, but you headed off to Amsterdam when you're 18, and in some ways that becomes a turning point for you, because while you went over there, I think, to the tulip factory, to the bulbs and sorting them out, you kind of then discovered a little bit of a way to sing and make a little bit of a living out of it.
Yeah, I was serving my time as a mechanic. I kind of left school quite early. I kind of drifted from summer holidays to just working in the garage, as my father had before. Left school at 15, as my brother had as well. So it was just, you know, it was a different time. You didn't really, that's what you were going to do. But everybody knew I was not destined for mechanics, but at least it was there for me. And about 3 years into it, a friend of mine was heading off to Holland. His brother had been over there, you know, working in the factories, and it just sounded like such a cool thing to do for the summer. So off I went, and I suppose left the mechanic thing behind. And yes, we were living in a campsite, and lots of kind of things drove me, I suppose, towards busking, where we were trying to get a job someplace else, and we sold our tent and were sleeping in ditches. And I had an opportunity came to sing a few songs with a guy who had a guitar, and I could see people were interested when I would sing, and also I was, suppose, making more money than I was doing anything else. So yeah, that's I suppose the leap of faith where you feel you can actually survive as a musician. So singing on the streets is a great way of, it's the greatest theatre of all, you know. You have to learn how to catch people's attention with your music.
And I can only imagine that Amsterdam, Jack, must have been such a mind-blowing city to visit at that point, at that age, and almost a chance to reinvent yourself again, because you're allowed be whoever you want to be when you're busking on the streets in Amsterdam. Was that in a sense where you started to discover who you were as a performer?
It gives you the self-belief that this is possible to do this. as I say, coming from a small town, you don't see it and you're not around that kind of thing. So it's kind of a pipe dream. But it was almost through default, and it's always things. That's a great lesson in life, is that sometimes things going wrong can set you up to do something else. As with me getting out of working in factories and being able to survive singing. And yes, going to a different country is always a great opportunity to reinvent yourself, and especially the 90s. It was early 90s. The 90s, I think, were a very special time. I think they will be viewed a bit little like the 60s in some respect, where there was this kind of optimism heading towards the millennium. Technology come in. We all thought, all the internet stuff, we thought we could probably do that within a few years, but we're only kind of able to do it now. So we all thought we were going to be cyberpunks or whatever. And So yeah, it definitely allowed me to gain self-confidence and open your eyes up to the world. And from there, I was either doing the bohemian traveling thing of going to the kibbutz in Israel and all that kind of stuff. But I said, right, I'll go back to Dublin and give it a blast. And that's kind of where I went back and started playing in places like the Da Club, met up with the Black Romantics, and began to, I suppose, grow an audience and experiment
and
with
a persona.
What I could do. Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I've had a few personas over the years, I suppose. I just kind of enjoy, create your own culture. I take a little bit of everything. And I mean, I always look at the Da Club as like serving my apprenticeship as a performer.
And Jack, for those now who have no idea what the Da Club was like, or that image you're giving us of Amsterdam or Dublin in the 90s, I mean, there's a sense of you started to meet up with like-minded crew at the South Circular Road, at that basement flat where you were living. What was it, 38 South Circular Road? Yeah,
I met up with David Constantine had an album called 38 SCR that he was making of his own songs. And Martin Clancy, who I still work with to this day, was producing it. And so the guys were doing some stuff, and we met up through mutual friends. My friend Anna McPartlin, who's a famous writer now. I knew her from.
know her from home.
Yeah, I knew her from. She used to go on holidays to Athy. So I met in with the guys, and they had a studio in the house, and they were recording. And sure, it was a Shangri-La. We all moved in, and we used, we'd record all night. We'd see how long we could record for, all these crazy stuff. Even though we'd no deadlines those days, we'd create deadlines. And I started touring with Dave. He had his band was called Serious Women. We toured Germany and did a lot of interesting shows around Dublin. And kind of from there then, I got in with the Black Romantics, who were mostly all based out around the Bayside area, Howth. And Ginger O'Keefe, the band leader, was looking to do a show of Jacques Brel songs. And I mean, I knew Jacques Brel via Scott Walker, who did the English, because Jacques Brel is originally in French. Though he was a Belgian. So we put this big band together, a kind of a Pogues type band, fiddles and accordions, and just fantastic musicians.
6 months ago, we got a video in the post. A band that we didn't know about, so I don't think anybody knew about, they just recently formed, called Jack L and the Black Romantics.
And we started a residency in the Da Club, which is just off Grafton Street on Clarendon Market, I think it's called, is this little street, not far from the Gaiety.
And if one day I should become a singer with a Spanish tongue, sings for women and great country, I'd sing to them with a guitar, borrow more from a coffee bar. What you don't know doesn't hurt you.
And, back then we would go on at 12 o'clock at night. There was a late night scene in Dublin then, musically.
Yeah.
You had, even the Gaiety had that. You think the lure that used to run all night.
I'd have to get drunk every night and talk about virility to some old grandmama who might be decked out like a Christmas tree. And though pink elephants...
But so we'd go on at 12 o'clock and it was just word of mouth. We were selling the place out continually, and it was just such a little speakeasy and such a kind of a happening place. And it was a place that everybody passed through, Tommy Tiernan supported us one time there. It was a mixture. Agnes Burnell would come down and sing with us.
And Camille O'Sullivan was around the scene then as well.
Alive and Well and living in Paris down there with a crew, and everybody, Damien Dempsey, Dr. Miller, Mundy, Paddy Casey, Juniper when they were, pre Damien Rice and Bell X1. So it was just, it was a fantastic place. I saw so much stuff.
If I joined the social world, became peculiar.
And there was a real vibe. And of course,
yeah.
You were young. I mean, I was just looking, because I do remember the midnight at the Olympia gigs, and seeing the whole Black Romantic show there was incredible. But I just fished out something from 96, which it's just worth remembering, because I think the piece they're saying... You were 23 then? You can correct him. But the line goes, when Jack L does Jacques Brel, he brings all his youthful, full-blooded vitality to the part. When he emerges on stage at the Dublin's Da Club, for instance, decked out in frock coat and brandishing his cane, it's like watching Johnny Depp doing a film version of Jacques Brel as alive and well and living in Paris. That was a pretty cool write-up.
Yeah. I haven't seen that one. It's pretty good. I'll go with that.
Locked up inside my opium den, surrounded by some Chinamen. I sing the song that I sang then, about the time they called me Jackie. If I could be for only an hour, if I could be for an hour every day, if I could be for just one little hour. Oh, yeah. Cute.
So that was the Irish Times on March 1996. It's kind of interesting, that whole night scene you're talking about in Dublin. There's now this conversation and movement about trying to resurrect that, like hopefully after the pandemic when we can actually go back to the city. But there was a really lively and bohemian scene where there was, eateries that opened into the early hours. There were cafes that people would go after those kind of gigs and hang out.
Yeah, there was just a nice kind of optimistic vibe at the time. And it still feels to this day like a very different time. Less rules, the old health and safety will be the death of us all, I always say, because you can't do anything now. But back then, we would do the shows. You would leave the place in the early hours. It was always bright when you left the place. Now places still exist. Like Whelan's of Dublin is a great bastion of that thing where you can enjoy yourself into the late hours. Though I'm probably past that at this stage, but
we both are.
Yeah, but the Velour Club, used to run all night, and you had every room in it, which was in the Gaiety. It would have a different thing on in every room. You'd have salsa in one room. You had the main
exactly.
venue
I went
open.
to the salsa.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
And the main room itself, like in the Gaiety, which is one of my favourite theatres in Dublin, would have some band on, and then you go somewhere else and something else would be happening.
But maybe it's also to do with being young, that there's that magic about it. I mean, that's why I feel particularly sorry for people who are in that age group now in the pandemic, because everything was switched off for them. And much as the virtual gigs and the lockdown sessions are brilliant, you do miss that whole vibe of being in a room with loads of people enjoying live music.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, I know it's not compared to people dying. It's down the list. But yeah, last year I just thought kids are going to miss their first gig out, their first festival.
Their first everything. Because
I remember when I was a kid and Fela was kind of the first thing that happened that was a big festival, and I had a car. I might have been this old orange Corolla that was falling to pieces, but we all piled into it, and I remember I had a black leather cowboy hat, which off we went, and it was just like a weekend apart from what the everyday mundane is. And I think that festival thing is very, very old. So I think it's a very, very important inbuilt primordial thing in us that we have to have a few weekends where
we go wild.
The Elysian mysteries, all that kind of stuff, you know.
I got the worst food poisoning ever at Fela, and I think it took about 3 weeks. It was one of those ones where whenever I hear the word Fela, I just think of it was the sausage breakfast in the B&B where the lovely lady had obviously reheated them, and I did feel I was going to die.
Yeah. Well, I thought it might mean those sandwiches they were selling in every garden. I've had the festival experience too. Yeah.
Talk to me about the look and that whole look that you developed then in terms of the clothes, the makeup, mascara, leather, everything that was going on. I mean, it's again part of that time and magic in it. But what was influencing you and what were you thinking in bringing all of those elements together?
Yeah, it was always, I suppose it was a magpie. I was taking a little bit of everything, but I always did like the show in the biz, you know, even though in the 90s grunge was a thing and everybody was wearing their day clothes or their work clothes, basically ripped jeans and all that. But I just always felt I was an opportunity to dress up, and I always, liked dressing up. I always just liked, I suppose there was a lot of extravagant stuff. Like the old...
Like what?
Well, I suppose the old PVC trousers and, red frock coats and, canes. And, I mean, particular songs like Jackie, which was a Browell song.
The Jacques Browell song,
I mean, I would use...
But you still do.
For certain songs, I would have different characters. I always liked the idea of method singing, where you became the character.
Well, long time coming, the big time is here. Oh, the future looks bright. Yeah, the course seems clear. Long time coming, 10 long years, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I hear them singing, I'm the king of Soho.
And I've always seen singing in the old shamanic sense. You're trying to crack reality, you're trying to shake people, you're trying to break not only the fourth wall between you and the audience, but the fifth wall, which is the wall inside people's heads. Because music did, I travelled via music when I was a kid, from just hearing songs with names in them and going, where is that? What is that? And the romanticism of it, and, the old palace of your imagination. And that's what songs stoke. I mean, I just was never going to be a shoegazer, I suppose. You're
a showman.
Well, it's not particularly that I went, I'm going to be a showman. I just start singing. The way I sing is quite a physical act. There's a lot of high C's and there's a lot of dramatic songs.
They tried to frame me, those lawyers and judges, but I swore on the Bible and all those Gideons. The ladies love me well, the gentlemen too. Oh, keep your hands in your pockets, but you could help the king of Soho.
So it just lent itself to that. I can't say there was a premeditation that I'm going to be David Bowie, or I'm going to be Jack Browell or whatever. It was just the music I was making. Yeah, the fashion of the time, maybe. But I mean, a lot of stuff. I was always into the old second-hand shop. I'd go in and find a tuxedo that somebody maybe died in, and they would be the things I would wear. And the more flamboyant and outrageous, I suppose. I mean, I think back to some of the things were just downright wrong.
But a bit like alter egos.
Yeah.
Going into clothes and costume allows you to be bigger and more than yourself as well. Because we all come from, as you were sort of saying, you come from a small place, we come from a small island. Sometimes it's hard then to see yourself as this projected other. And having another name, even when you use the Jack L, but also having these costumes, these masks, allow you to be bigger as well,
yeah.
in the terms of a stage and a physical presence, and also mentally that you can move into these characters.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we all grew up in the black and white kind of Catholic Ireland, where, you know, curtain twitching and all that kind of stuff. So I was always very much so against that and trying to, I suppose, enhance myself and just enhance the. I don't know. I just thought it was always. Well, I was, just simple cultural things like Top of the Pops every Thursday night. You put it on, and you saw these people who were completely different to what your everyday was, and you went, right, that's the thing for me, you know. That's where I want to go.
You mentioned Bowie there, and when I think about those early shows and the persona and the Black Romantics and all of the ways that it was coming together around that time, there's also an element of androgyny around it, things that you see with David Bowie or Mark Boland from before him and with T-Rex, that's how old I am, that you have a sense in which some of those characters and performers and singers were able to morph in the gender lines and embrace both in their performance and their characters and the way they played with it. Was that something that you thought about as well?
Yeah, no, I love the flamboyance. Androgyny is great, and just the whole Dionysian thing of just going for it when you're doing something is so bloody liberating. I mean, I've always... one of my bad sayings is that, you know, being on stage is the license to be an asshole, you know. It's to do what you want to do. And, I mean, I used to do costume changes and all that stuff in shows, and for different characters and different songs, and it always just seemed very, very natural to me, you know. And I always enjoyed the freedoms of it, you know, songs like Ode to Ed Wood, I Like Girls and I Like Boys, I Like Leather, I Love Your Toys. It was just a celebration of freedom.
I like girls and I like boys. I like leather, I love your toys. I like sucking on your mule. Sweet and dry, make me feel.
Also just shaking people, you know, out of you know, small-mindedness as well, you know. Yeah. So, and I always saw that as the duty of any rock and roller or any rock and roll music or any music, is to shake the foundations of reality and create your own reality. And Elvis, you know, cracked the world open as Sinatra did before him. I mean, Sinatra was where they created the teenagers, basically, the whole idea of teenage fandom. And, you know, music, I always say music and business are an oxymoron. Music is this magical thing that nobody can really, it's made of spirit, it's playing with airwaves, it's messing around with words. Obviously business is a different thing, and it's always a battle between the two, but it's just such a fantastic, fun thing to do, and has helped us all, especially at this time. Music has become more potent. I mean, I went out and I got to do a few shows in September when things opened up a little bit.
When we opened up a bit.
Yeah, and the Limerick Concert Hall, you know, they were socially distanced and they were streamed and all that. And down in Kerry, I did one as well. And I've never felt music so potent. It just felt like you were doing something important. Just that feeling of like wartime or something, when people are suddenly allowed out and about again, and some kind of normality. And I'm looking forward to, you know, getting back to that. Much as I've enjoyed stopping and chilling out for the first time in my life, really. Well, saying that, I've been doing the live shows every weekend, which is quite a task in itself.
You've been working very hard with the shows and doing the Facebook and the YouTube sessions, and you can see from the reaction from your fan club what it's meant to them. And I do know from having worked with you in a very long radio series with Julie Feeney called High Fidelity, how loyal your fans are. Like, it was remarkable whenever we did anything. There's just this incredible following you have, particularly with women. But in a sense, they're very loyal. And I could see when I'm looking at the Facebook and the lockdown sessions, your fans have been right behind you.
For me, that's been the fantastic thing about that is, you know, solidifying, I suppose, that community where we all meet up on a Saturday night And people chat, people are chatting while you're doing the songs to each other.
Chatting in Facebook.
I'm asking, but that's the thing, you obviously can't hear them, but you can see it. And then you're asking how they are, and you're getting stories sent in. We did whatever was the 20th anniversary of Metropolis Blue, and people were saying the first time they were at a gig. And
Or a rooftop lullaby falling from the sky sends us to sleep tonight. It's the apple in your eye keeps you as sweet as pie, dreaming through the night. Oh, it's a rooftop lullaby.
there's been so many things in it that have been so moving, reading people's stories at the time of where they were, and they heard a song and it did something. And also just when I started doing the live streams, which was really weird because you can't practice for them. You just go online and there's 1,000 people watching you, and there's nothing in between the songs except your inane babbling. So it was really weird. But when I finished and I was actually able to sit down and read the comments, and I saw people who I'd met years ago or hadn't seen in years, and then just fans who were just delighted that they had something that felt almost normal on a Saturday night. It was really, really moving. In some way, it has solidified, I suppose, the fan base, and it's given me something to. I've been doing my own stuff, but I've been doing other artists a lot as well. So, and it's always like doing a thesis. So every week is this big build-up where you're learning all these songs.
You're learning songs.
Dylan, Cohen, Cash, all the big names, Elvis, Bowie, the Beatles. It goes on, 80s nights. And we did recently we did Moon Tunes.
Wider than a mile, I'm crossing you in style.
Which was a full moon, so every song I could get about songs containing the moon, which there is a lot. There's several volumes in that one too. So it was just
There's
fun.
a few albums of moon songs. I
Almost.
can see a whole new album of moon songs coming, Jack.
I wrote half of them. I mean, the moon features so much in what I do.
Wherever you're going, I'm going your way to drifter.
But so for me, it's been like staying fit, both musically, mentally, and learning all this tech as well. And then just I'm really interested in the idea of how shows can work. I mean, basically what I'm saying is that people go, oh yeah, it's not like a real gig. Yes, obviously, but there's something else going on. Music still moves people. The fact that it's people tune in mostly in real time and stay tuned in for the whole thing, that people want that old felt presence of something happening in real time that we're all experiencing together. And that's very in the moment and very mindful, that we're all experiencing something in real time. That fascinates me. That's what life is about. It's a series of moments, from the magic to the mundane. And you just have to know how to turn the mundane ones into the magic ones, which they can't be all the time.
Billy McGlynn said a while back, I think last December, to me, that what we've really missed in the pandemic is this idea of communal joy, the idea of sharing something together, whether it's a football match or a music gig, or being in a place where we feel more than one. What we miss, which is what you're describing in your virtual sessions on Facebook, is that people are not just enjoying the music, but they do feel that in one moment they've a shared experience and a shared joy.
In many ways, sometimes it feels like people are, enjoying the chat in between probably more so than the music.
Being together.
Yeah. Initially, I was not into. I never did anything like that. It's all fresh to me, but it's been a fantastic learning curve, and as I say, it works.
You've really embraced it. Fair play to you. You've really embraced it, because some artists, and it's very understandable, have been intimidated by the technology and they've stopped doing anything, which is a terrible loss.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned, Jack, and I think we've all had this experience in the last year of watching funerals on live streams of people we love and loved.
Yeah.
And you had that experience of singing at funerals as well for your uncle.
Yeah, I had two uncles who actually passed away, and I sang at the funerals, and that was the weirdest thing is people, having to be, I suppose, people not being able to come together to celebrate the person is one of the hardest parts of the whole lockdown. It's been a very, very hard time. There's no doubt about it. I think the World War II is the only thing to equate with this. But as I say, it's, at least there's people not dropping bombs on us, and there's not, there's not the imminent invasion of anybody. So, and we have all this technology, I suppose, that we can do things.
The things we're really losing is that idea of our social self.
And it's been great that this has enhanced community, as in people look at what's around them and what's going on. But yeah, it's been awful to see the demise of so many businesses that have been around for years, so many music venues, so many people I know who can't gig online, or there's no way for them to. I mean, I feel very lucky and privileged that I've been able to maintain, movement musically, that I could continue to perform. But there's been a lot of work involved too, but it's been worth it in the end.
And Jack, for somebody who's normally travelling and touring a lot, this has been, as you say, a period when you've been at home performing from there in Athy. And has that been interesting? Has that been quite a change, that you've been in situ, that you've been back home for such a lengthy period?
Well, I am actually over in Laois direction, over that way, over near Stradbally is where I live. So I'm out in the country, and it's been great. I mean, I've always loved living in the country. I love going to places like LA and experiencing the madness of that, and then coming back to the middle of nowhere in Ireland. It's one of the greatest things. And I'm the kind of person who would literally watch the grass grow, and have been, because I have to cut it. But just experiencing nature, seeing the seasons change is something I just love. The Irish weather, yeah, it's got its problems, but I actually enjoy it. I enjoy being out. You feel alive. You're cold, you're hot. It's I don't know, those things I love, and I've loved having a year or now or more of being able to stay into one spot and just see the seasons change. I wouldn't mind if I didn't travel again. Of course I will, but I've done so much of it that it's kind of I've done it. So I'm, in some respect, I'm looking forward, to getting back at it. But I've enjoyed the virtual thing very much so, and I think and hope it will remain something that can happen in the winter months. And now everybody's learned how to do it. It's been funny seeing the arms race of people getting better TVs, getting better internet so they can enjoy it more. Has been fun to watch as well. And seeing what other people were doing made me go, wow, you can watch it on TV. I didn't know any of this stuff before I started. It was just a phone and what it could do. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back on the road, I suppose.
And you've toured with loads of people. Obviously, with Jools Holland a lot. You've a really good relationship with Jools Holland.
Yeah.
I mean, you've toured with tons of big names. And obviously, that's back on the cards when, fingers crossed, we open up. And that will really be starting from the summer. You've got a gig coming up, which was postponed, or with Sting, I think?
Yeah, there's a Sting gig in Germany that's been there. I was supposed to do last year, so I'm just waiting to see is it on this year. And then I've got a lot of legacy gigs. There's Jools Holland tour in the UK, so I'm just waiting to see how things go, like everybody else.
I mean, how did you connect with them, and how did that relationship develop with Jools?
Well, it was just through, I suppose, gigging around the UK a lot, and I've been touring with him for a good few years now, and played great places like the Royal Albert Hall and all, just so many fantastic places. And yeah, he's just a music lover. He could talk to him about music all day. He loved the album I did of Randy Newman.
'Cause the city's dying, and I don't know why. It's hard just to live. Oh, Baltimore, man, it's hard just to live, just to live.
Just a natural music lover that you could sit down and talk to for hours. And just a fantastic touring group. I mean, he has people who've been with him since he started, really, and it's just this big
very loyal crew, it seems.
Yeah. All the amazing singers, you know, Mark Almond, hanging out with him and touring with him as well with his show. So there's been so many great opportunities that have obviously come through it.
You've toured with Neil Sedaka, with Imelda May. There's a huge range of artists that you've had the opportunity to be around.
Yeah.
Have you a sense of a favourite gig or one that you felt that really blew your mind?
Yeah, well, I did get to play with the Brooklyn Philharmonic Orchestra in Manhattan outdoors with the full singing, you know.
Lovely.
Singing some of my own stuff, and then singing, I think it was when I had the Randy Newman stuff out, I did a few of those songs, and I ended up, you know, I sang New York, New York with the Brooklyn Philharmonic Orchestra, with a couple of thousand people looking at you, looking back. We were on the harbour, it was on one of the piers, so I was looking back at Manhattan with a flyover with cars going by and skyscrapers, and you're singing with them and you're going, well, if there was Carlsberg moments, this would be it. Not to promote Carlsberg, but you know, this is like a dream stuff. And then, you know,
gorgeous.
I've got the tour across America, the Flas with, you know, Elvis Costello headlining and lots of other Van Morrison.
And in some ways, you've travelled enough, you've filled your boots with it that you wouldn't miss it. But you certainly, when you had those opportunities, you maxed them out. There's such an array of people that you've had the chance to work with.
And you learn from everybody. You know, I remember seeing Elvis Costello performing at the Fla in Boston, and you know, there was not acts all day long, all the bells and whistles. And I think it was when he had the album out of Burt Bacharach songs, and he was the headliner. He walked out with a guitar.
I loved that album.
Yeah, he walked out with a guitar and a piano, and somebody playing piano with him. But anyway, he, after seeing all the bells and whistles of everybody all day and big bands, he came out with just that, songs that were amazing, and the whole place was singing, and he just blew everybody away. So you learn lessons like that, like the Old Man River thing of you have all the technology, but it breaks down and you sing without any amplification, and people tune in more so and remember it more so because it's something different.
There's an old man called the Mississippi. That's an old man that I wanna be. What does he care if the world's got troubles? What does he care if the land ain't free?
The same as with him coming out and doing that proved to me how it doesn't have to be turned up to 11 all the time, volume wise. You know, dynamic is everything to me in a show, and doing shows has always been a fantastic, you know, it's something like flying a plane. You try and get the plane off the ground. You can take a nice relaxed takeoff, or you can just shoot right off like a rocket, depending on the song you do. You get it up there, and then you're trying to, you know, play with the dynamic of the energy in the room, or the energy online, or just the energy you're playing with yourself as regards songs you're doing. And then you try to land it. You can, you know, land it with a big tune, or you can just bring it down gently.
I'm tired of living, but I'm scared of dying. An old man river, he just keeps
keeps rolling.
You're basically playing with energy, and as I think it was Tom Waits said,
It's the art.
Music and songwriting is something interesting to do with air. You know, you're just vibrations, and so it's a constant learning curve.
And I saw you doing that, playing with the dynamics in the National Concert Hall once when it was the interval. And it's the concert hall, so it does have a little bit of that formality around it. It's not Vicar Street, it's not Whelan's. And so everybody was doing their normal thing in the interval, you know, queuing for a drink or chatting. And suddenly there's this sound from the grand piano in the foyer there, and it's golden brown. I always remember it because it was that moment where you completely changed the energy of what this is a really predictable moment to something that became something else.
Golden brown, fine a temptress. Through the edges she's heading west. From far away, space for a day. Never a frown with golden brown.
That was one of the gifts of that, is to make the National Concert Hall a venue where nobody knew quite what was going to happen, because there you were playing. Well, somebody else was playing the piano, but you were singing Golden Brown in the middle of the interval, surprising them.
Yeah, no, the interval thing, I just always, you know, you cool down. It's like you have to start from zero again, and the energy drops, and then you have to build it back up again. So wherever my head was at the time, I went, right, they want an interval, okay, but I'm going to go out and play it during the interval, just to yeah, as you said, break the what would the obvious or
the expected norm.
Yeah. And I remember it was, you know, it was a bit raucous, and people were hanging over the banister and stuff. I think.
Yeah.
They kind of, I don't know if people are still allowed to do it, but at the time it seemed like a very good idea. And yeah, there you go.
Definitely.
People remember it because it's not the obvious. It's always the things the things outside of the ordinary that kind of stay with people.
Because music is an experience, and in some ways at those events it's a shared experience. But Jack, what does singing mean to you? Because in many ways I can't imagine you not singing, even if you weren't travelling. It's so much part, as you say, of your experience of being alive. But what does singing itself mean to you?
Oh, it's everything. I mean, it's my religion, it's my belief system, it's my history, it's the very essence of what I do and what I am and what I try to do to other people. I try to share the joy of singing because I was lucky enough to be born with a voice, and then just, you know, what it does culturally, what it does historically, what it teaches, how it's a never-ending lesson to learn things and to experience other parts of the world and to mind travel, if you like. It's a spiritual act, it's a physical act, it's a cerebral act, you know, it works on all the levels, and it's older, you know. They think maybe we made music before we could talk, so it's the great communicator, and it's something we take for granted. But I always think that songs and music are like the magic that still exists in our everyday life, because everybody turns on the radio or they have a song to, and it moves us in ways that we don't understand. It doesn't have to have lyrics. It can just be music, a major to a minor chord, shifts something that's in our heads that we don't quite understand. I know science has tried to, that you'll see theories, you'll see people explaining the world away, but nobody knows anything has always been one of my main mantras in life. But everybody likes to pretend they know everything, and we're in the age of that, where, you know, if you don't agree with what I agree with, you know, you're out. But nobody knows anything has always been, I think, a very helpful antidote I've used. Just when people say you can't do things, music has been a vocation. It's my life, really. It's the only thing that made sense of the world, or enhanced it enough that I could bear it.
And Jack, we started with the beautiful song you've released with your dad singing. But I know one of the other thing that most of us have been doing in the last year in the pandemic is spending time where we can with our family, if we can be close to them, being aware just of how precious those relationships are. And you were mentioning, I think, also that you've done this project, musical, artistic, around your granddad.
Yeah, my grandfather, Jack Lukeman, he had a kind of a memoir. You know, he was he died in the 90s, but he left behind a whole books of drawings and muses and poems, and it's always been a thing I've had and wanted to do something with. So I was basically learning how to use film, trying to shoot a little movie. So I basically did a duet with him. It's music, but it's inspired by those AMSR recordings, audio meridian sensory. What's that? I can't remember what the third word is, but it's basically speaking really quietly and drawing people in and telling stories.
You can't but help here. It's
They were very popular on YouTube. People listen to them going to bed, sleep at night. So
They're kind of fetish, apparently.
Well, there is that aspect of it too, yeah. Which, but I've always liked. But that's oddly, it's another thing I've learned. I learned from comedians. I remember one night watching a comedian in the White Horse in Dublin years ago, and the audience were talking over him, and he just started to whisper, and the whole place just quietened down, even though he was saying nothing. So there's something about the whisper that draws people in.
Commands us.
Yeah.
I will relive again. The memory of times I used to know.
So I was interested in that, and I'm a massive film fan, you know. And now that we have the ability to make a movie on our phone or on our iPad or whatever, I made a 20-minute movie incorporating footage that I shot in the area that I live, the nature of the place. It basically is from the perspective of how everything shut down in that first lockdown, and we went back to the early 1900s where there wasn't cars on the road and you could hear the birds sing and all the stuff that people were noticing. And that made me think of my grandfather Jack Lukeman and his era. You know, he would have been a great inspiration. I have great memories of, we would visit on a Sunday and he'd be sitting in a room with John McCormack blaring. The room would be full of smoke and he would be listening to John McCormack, just sitting there listening to it. You know, things like that were really inspiring to me. It's
a gorgeous project, Jack, and again, there's been a few blessings or opportunities in this time when everything paused, where we've been able to do things which sometimes we put on the back burner, and that project about your granddad is definitely one of them, where you've created something where you might have been too busy normally to do it.
Well, it was also nice to create a 20 minutes of music rather than where I'm always dealing in the 3 to 5 minute pop songs or rock and roll songs or whatever the format that we are all used to. It was great to just make a piece of music that lasted and to speak and not. I mean, there's a song in it. There's a good story. There's a song in it called Troubadour Well, which is a place that my grandfather kept referencing, but I couldn't find the song. It's a local song in Athy, and I looked online. I couldn't find it on YouTube. I couldn't find it on Google or anywhere. And then I rang up my father. And I said to him, do you know a song called Troubadour Well? And he went, as oft I have stood on the bridge of Athy. And there it was in folklore. There it was in his head. It had been recorded.
Fantastic.
And it's into the barrow, Troubadour will flow. How oft I've drank out of Troubadour's well. They say in its waters
there is a great spell.
And so there was beautiful things like that. So the song features in it, and but it was also just to show, you know, my grandfather Jack Keogh, his brother Dan Keogh was in the First World War on the fighting for England, and then my other grandfather, our great uncle Pat, was in the old IRA, you know. So you had these one of those families where you had the two sides doing two different things, and just so much history there that was just nice to capture in some shape or form, and not to do it in a conventional sense, to do it in more of a dream time kind of sequence. Yeah, and it's just also, the visuals are just a celebration of the beautiful place that we live in Ireland.
It's wonderful, and I hope you get to release that.
Yeah, I'm trying to, you know, I still have a few little bit things to do with it, so it's not released yet, but hopefully I'll get it out this year. I mean, I'm also kind of looking at trying to get an album together for when things do open up, because pre to the lockdown I was doing an album of my own stuff, so I'm kind of actually just getting back into that now, trying to finish off the album I was doing, with the hope of getting out the end of the year or in the new year, getting some new songs out there.
Jack, it's been lovely to catch up and talk with you again, and I've been enjoying the streamed album, and particularly Here Comes the Sun, one of my favourite songs. It always makes me feel better, that song. Is there one, beyond your dad's lovely song, from that lockdown album that lifts you?
Forever Young kind of was the Dylan song, was one that I really enjoy singing, and just you can bathe in it, and it's got sorrow in it, but it's got such joy in it too. And it's, you know, it's one he wrote for his kids, but it's just something to say to us all, you know, just don't let go of the child inside, because that's what'll keep you alive, and that's what'll, you know, is one of the most beautiful parts of you.
Forever young, forever young, may you stay forever young.
So I've really enjoyed singing that. There's been a few, you know, songs like "Girl from the North County" is another Dylan song, which isn't on the album, which is why Volume 2 is pending. But there's been so many.
Oh, bring it out! You're allowed, bring it out,
no,
Jack. I'm going to let you have.
I got to concentrate on the original stuff, or I'll never get it done.
Forever Young, again, I love it. I played it at my eldest brother's funeral 2 years ago, that with the Here Comes the Sun, and it was just, so they're both songs which, you know, that way when you have an opportunity to pick songs. Now, sadly, there was no live singer at that. It was a crematorium in London. Yeah. But it was so beautiful, because the right song, and this is what you mean about the power of music in a song, the right song at the right moment can change us and change the mood.
Yeah, suddenly the world is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful moment, be it of a melancholic nature or be it of just an unbridled joy. It can, and do
sometimes that. It allows you to say goodbye as well within that.
Most definitely, and so many people have requested Forever Young, you know, which is lovely as well on the live stream gigs, that you get to commemorate people, and it is an up and down roller coaster ride doing the thing, because in one request you're somebody's talking about somebody's in hospital or somebody who has died, and then you're getting someone telling you somebody's been born, and you celebrate their new grandchild or someone's birthday who's 8 years old, or, you know, it's the symphony of life is right there on a
and emotions, all the ways in which we feel. Jack, it's been great to talk to you, and wishing you the best with the new album, whether it's Lockdown 2 or the one that you were about to bring out before the pandemic interfered with all our lives.
I've got a few new
hope
tunes
you also
going
get to tour
too.
soon. Great. Look forward to them, Jack, and best of luck with the touring when it starts again with Jools and that gig, hopefully with Sting, which will eventually happen. So take care and talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
And that's all for this episode of The Family of Things. My thanks to Jack for making it happen. And we've put some links to Jack's music in the show notes so you can continue to enjoy his voice. If you like what we do, please do support it. Consider becoming a member of our Patreon community for as little as €1 a month. Really helps us make season 2. Or use our tip jar on the website, thefamilyofthings.com. And if you want more, we're making a brand new podcast with the gorgeous Panty Bliss called The Panty Personals, intimate one-to-one conversations with unique performances. Our first episode with Brezzy Niall Breslin is out, and coming next is an American in Dublin, the lyrical and funny Galia Arad. Check it out, The Panty Personals. Thanks for listening.